The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Hello and welcome to the Quality in Action webinar for November. This is April Reardon with the Mentoring Partnership of Minnesota. We have lots of panelists today, and we have a great topic here in talking about youth mentoring and our response to the film Waiting for Superman. There's been lots of buzz about it, and we'll find out who's seen it, but to figure out how do we respond to the call to action issued from this film. This is a monthly webinar series that the Mentoring Partnership of Minnesota hosts. Some of you have been here many times, and others this topic may have drawn you in for the first time, but just to note that we do this the first Wednesday of every month, trying to find a timely topic where we can connect some research with practice and think about how do we put quality in action for youth mentoring. What's great is that for this month we are partnering, and hopefully we'll continue to do some partnering with Sarah Kremer with Friends for Youth Mentoring Institute. Friends for Youth has also started doing a monthly webinar series, and Sarah and I talked to each other and thought, well, if we're both going to cover this topic, we should team up and do this together. So this webinar will actually be offered twice. And Sarah, do you want to just introduce yourself or say hello while you're still on here? I know we should congratulate our West Coast folks on the World Series win, and Sarah has experienced some of the celebration today, if you want to mention that as well.
Sure. Well, hello, everyone. This is Sarah Kremer, and I'm Program Director at Friends for Youth Mentoring Institute. And I'm really excited to be collaborating with April and the Mentoring Partnership of Minnesota. And just to let you know, I'm in Sacramento now, but I was hoping to be here earlier and completely logged in, but we got caught in a little bit of traffic for the Giants parade that was happening in San Francisco this morning. So go Giants. We're really excited about that. But I'm happy to be doing this webinar. So thank you for joining us, everyone.
So if you know anybody who couldn't make it today or after the webinar, if you think of somebody you who might want to participate in talking about this topic and in this format again, Friends for Youth will be offering the same webinar on November 16th, same time, Central Time, same time, 12 to 1:15 Central Time, 10 to 11:15 Pacific Time. And we have the information here within the slides. Some housekeeping things. The slides, that this entire presentation is available on SlideShare, and the Mentoring Partnership of Minnesota Training Institute, it's uploaded there. I'm sure Sarah will have it uploaded on her site as well. All the resources and websites, if you download the slides, then you have direct links to all the resources that we mentioned during the webinar. And I typically send a follow-up email to all of our participants as well. So if anybody mentions anything during the webinar that is another resource that's easy to send a link out to everyone, I'll do that. So if you're posting questions or wondering how can we get access to something, just know that we will send, all those things are available in those different formats. Just want to also, so there's a picture of me there too, April Reardon, and also to note that Courtney Erickson, who is my fabulous AmeriCorps member here at the Mentoring Partnership of Minnesota, is also helping as an organizer. She helped create all the slides and will also be managing and keeping an eye on questions. So looking at the box below, we do have a lot of attendees for this particular webinar, so in order to ask questions or to share comments, which we absolutely want people to do, this is the great part about these webinars, is it gives us all the chance to talk to each other and to be able to talk to the panelists who have been so gracious to join us today. But one option is to raise your hand, and Courtney will keep an eye on hands raised and unmute you. If your hand's raised and we don't unmute you immediately, I'm probably just waiting for a break in the conversation so that we can do that. Every now and then there's a little bit of a delay on if you raise your hand, it doesn't pop up on our screen right away, so just you can always shoot us a message too and just say, my hand is raised, I want to talk. We love it when you do that, and we can unmute and you can actually just speak to us. But we do know that some of you are not participating by phone or might not have access to a microphone. So another option is just to type your questions into the question and answer section and submit that to us. And if it's just a question that we can respond to directly, Courtney will try to do that, and otherwise we'll share that question with all of the attendees. There might be times when we have lots of comments and questions, and we'll try to summarize and get to as many of them as we can. And just to note that if you do raise your hand and you're unmuted, to just monitor your background noise, but Courtney, in all the work that she's doing here, will be keeping an eye on that as well. We can see if somebody's got some noise in the background, and we can go ahead and mute that for you. So those are just a little bit of the logistics, and you can post questions about that as well. We're going to start off with just a quick poll of those of us who are logged in here and find out how many of us have seen the film. So we'll give you a moment to respond to the poll. Providing that yes, not yet, or isn't showing yet. We're getting close there. I'm going to give it a few more seconds, so if you haven't voted yet, please go ahead and register your respond to the poll. All right, I'm going to go ahead and close this and share with all of you. So as you can see, there's a lot of us who have not seen, or a lot of you who have not seen the film yet. A big chunk that it isn't showing at any theaters near me. I mean, that's the case in Minnesota for sure, that it's only showing in Minneapolis. So there's a huge part of the state that hasn't really had access to seeing the film. So 15% have seen the film. I think that's an interesting thing to keep an eye on for how we present the information and think about how do we respond. Or if you're getting all this buzz about it but you haven't had a chance to see it yet, to be thinking about some of those reasons why. We have some, it looks like, Courtney, we have some comments and questions.
Yeah, just the questions are, it's on my Netflix queue, so I want to see the movie, and then
nice.
Just a couple other comments there.
And we have one hand raised. Valerie, did you want to share something? Let's see here. Valerie? Yeah, I'll unmute. Valerie, did you have something to share? You had your hand up? Maybe not. Okay. Well, I am going to, all right, I'll hide that poll and go back to the presentation. So for considering that lots of people have not seen the film yet, just knowing that the film is from Davis Guggenheim, Academy Award-winning director of An Inconvenient Truth, and that Waiting for Superman is just exploration of the current state of public education in the United States and how it is affecting our children. It goes through this journey into the lives of 5 kids, and they include Daisy, who's in Los Angeles 5th grader, and this is the words from the film's website, but who, no matter what, never gives up on big plans for her future. It also features Francisco, who is a Bronx 1st grader, whose mom will do anything to give him a shot at a better life. Also features Anthony, who's in Washington, D.C. He's a 5th grader, and we see him in search of, and his grandmother in search of a different life from that of the dad he lost to drug addiction. It also features Emily, an 8th grader in Silicon Valley, also in Redwood City, California, which is where Friends for Youth is located, and we have a teacher from her school who is a panelist here as well. But Emily, who fears being permanently stamped as unfit for college, and finally Bianca, a Harlem kindergartner, who is already aiming with her single mother's valiant help to make it against the odds. So going through their stories and looking at what chances are available in our American education system, and some of the, it's a heart-wrenching story, and looking at and really putting a face on those, on the impact that on what's happening, and you get this personal glimpse into just these heart-wrenching situations. So I don't want to blow the whole thing for lots of you who haven't seen it yet, but ultimately in the end, you know, you're kind of rooting for them to either get into the schools that they want, or you know, get some sort of opportunity, and you know, there's some good news and some bad news for kids, and a lot of bad news. And thinking about it leaves you thinking, you know, either leaves you feeling really depressed or kind of thinking, what is it, what can I do to help, or how can I be a part of making some change in regards to this issue. Pause for anything else? Okay. And we have a second poll here. So we have some statistics here, but we'll start. The first poll is how many students, to ask you, how many students drop out of high school in the United States each year? I usually give about 30 seconds for people to respond.
April, while you're waiting for people to respond to the poll, I'll just add that when I saw the film, I got to see it back in August to an advanced screening, and felt that it was very emotionally heart-wrenching, like you were talking about at the end. They're very effective at telling that story, but then when you get to the when you start piecing it all together of the educational systems that they did portray, and the ones I know that you couldn't cover every single school, but it was very interesting the range that they wanted to get and who they ended up choosing as representatives for these students. So I'm sure we'll get to kind of delve into that a little bit later, but it was very interesting perspective over the overall educational system. Just want to add that.
Yeah. Great. All right, so you guys have been checking the websites. There we go. So 60% of you said 1.3 million, 38% said 550,000. So let's see here. So you were correct, 1.3 million students drop out of high school each year. And looking at the America's Promise Grad Nation site and with Mentor, the National Mentoring Partnership, that's where some of these statistics have come from. So maybe you've been seeing a lot of those things. But, you know, looking at some of that reality that a third of all children, you know, half of low-income and minority youth fail to graduate on time. Only 10% of those students who enroll in college graduate. You know, looking at what's available for, you know, who's skilled for 21st century jobs. These are also some of those realities that we're facing. So like I mentioned before, we've got some great panelists, you know, to think about how are mentoring programs, how can mentoring programs respond to the film, how can we use the film to make the case for mentoring, and also thinking about is mentoring a realistic response to addressing issues of academic achievement. And so first off, we are delighted to have Mark Wheeler joining us. Mark is a distinguished fellow of the William T. Grant Foundation with Portland State University, which is home to the Summer Institute for Youth Mentoring. With Portland State University as his fellowship host site, he has Tom Keller and David Dubois, names that are probably familiar to our attendees, as his research mentors. And Mark also worked for 8 years as an executive at a Big Brothers Big Sisters agency in Alaska. But he is currently studying research-based innovation within Big Brothers Big Sisters mentoring organizations, but is also the co-author with Tom and David of this recent meta-analysis in about school-based mentoring. So I'll let Mark say more about that. But having Mark on here to share some of this research and information so that we have that research perspective on, does mentoring work, and what kind of impact does mentoring have on academic outcomes. So welcome, Mark. Thank you so much for being here. And if you can, I'll hand over to you. I'll be moving your slides forward, though, for you.
Thank you, April. Thanks for the opportunity to be here today. Can everybody hear me?
We can hear you.
Awesome. I was having a little trouble with the mute, unmute buttons. But yeah, just want to thanks for the opportunity to be here, and to thank WT Grant Foundation for supporting this work, and for SRCD for publishing our paper, and to thank my co-authors, Tom and David, for all their support. But I'm just going to talk about school-based mentoring and acknowledge that there's a whole range of mentoring programs across the country. I'd also like to encourage folks, I'm just going to talk about one piece of the paper that we wrote, the meta-analysis of findings. But it's a 30-page report, and we tried to write it for a mixture of policy and practitioners and academics. So it's maybe a little more accessible than some mentoring research, and you can get it online at srcd.org. There's also a 2-page policy brief that summarizes the work. Maybe the next slide. Mm-hmm. So we wrote this paper, and the genesis of it came from the fact that there were 3 papers, or 3 studies on school-based mentoring, 3 large studies of school-based mentoring using a randomized controlled trial over the past few years, that each came up with different conclusions about the effectiveness of school-based mentoring. So we wrote this paper to try to answer why. Why do these studies come up with different results? And so what we did in the paper was looked at the impacts of 1 year of school-based mentoring in all 3 studies, and note that the Big Brothers Big Sisters study also spans the school year. But we just looked at the first year of impacts from school-based mentoring, and as you look at it, it's really only about 5 months of mentoring that happened in that first year. So we looked at this first year results, and what about the studies and the populations they looked at and how the studies were done that may have attributed these different conclusions. And we also took the tool of meta-analysis to combine the studies and to see what we can say about more largely about the impacts of school-based mentoring across these 3 studies, which taken together represent a wide variety of school-based mentoring programs. If I can have the next slide, please. Meta-analysis kind of sounds scary, but really it's a fancy word for saying averaging. It's a tool that social scientists use to compare, to combine different studies and to standardize the impacts across a set of studies. So we took these 3 studies and we used the tools of meta-analysis to combine them and see what they said across the 3 studies. So we took the 3 studies and said, well, what are the common outcomes that the studies looked at? And we found 19 areas that were examined by at least 2 of the 3 studies. And then we used meta-analysis to see which of those areas had a statistically significant impact. And you can see these look like error bars. These are what you call a confidence interval. And there were 6 of the 19 outcomes in which we have a 95% chance that the outcome did not include 0, and those are the ones at the top. Oh yeah, look at that highlighter. I don't get to use that though, huh?
We could make that happen for you. Sure.
That's all right. That's all right. Just a note, in the next slide I'll show you these, but some of the hard academic impacts are down towards the bottom with science performance and social studies, et cetera. And there was not, if you look across the 3 studies, there was not a statistically significant impact in those areas. So if we get to the next slide.
Yep.
So just a little more clearly wanted to present the 6 findings that did show up as statistically significant. And these numbers after them are what's called an effect size, which is a little hard to explain, but it's basically standardizing the impact across. It's a tool you can use to standardize the impact and means what's the standard difference between say your treatment group that got the intervention and your control group that didn't. But these are, as you look at other meta-analyses, these are considered small or modest effects. And they concentrate in these areas that are more in terms of attitudes and behaviors, but not necessarily academic performance per se. So what it looks like from this is that 1 year of school-based mentoring may have an impact on these attitudes and behaviors that may help keep kids in school or lead to academic improvement in the future. We know that truancy and absenteeism reduction and reducing school-related misconduct, for instance, can help. There's some links to future dropout prevention and reduction in delinquency in the future, but we just don't know what based on these short-term impacts, what the long-term impacts of 1 year of school-based mentoring may be in terms of academic success. Can I go to the next slide, please? So just to put these findings in context, we decided it might be useful to compare these findings with other findings from other school-based interventions. And so we took some of the outcomes and compared them to the SEL programs, which is social and emotional learning. There's a meta-analysis of those programs, which are classroom-based, mostly through teacher curriculums that help improve social and emotional learning at a school level usually, and also volunteer tutoring programs, as well as the Experience Corps program, which is more of a tutoring/mentoring program that uses older adults. And you can see that the SEL and the tutoring programs had larger impacts and had more of an impact in these academic performance areas. But also note that those were largely made up of small researcher-controlled trials, whereas the SBM studies were these field trials where you're going to expect a smaller outcome just from the challenges of implementation. And then come into the last slide, April. Mm-hmm. And one other table we showed in the paper was just thinking about this reduction in truancy and absenteeism that we found. We thought, well, if this does have maybe a future impact on dropout prevention, what does the Department of Education think about effective programs in that area? So we looked at the What Works Clearinghouse and examined what they provide in terms of effective programs for dropout prevention in terms of staying in school. And it was interesting to note that the 6 programs with the most positive ratings from IES, 3 of those 6 programs included some mentoring component. And now, albeit those programs were much more structured, maybe using paid mentors and more frequent contact than in the typical school-based mentoring program, but it still maybe hints that mentoring could be an effective tool for keeping kids in school. It's also interesting to see the Big Brother Big Sister study, which I mentioned looked at 2 years of school-based mentoring. Most of their impacts washed out the second year, since a lot of kids weren't getting mentoring anymore. But the one of the impacts that did hold on the next school year was in terms of reduction in truancy. So just want to offer our findings and encourage you to read the full report if you're interested. But and just to note that this is just talking about one school year of school-based mentoring, and not these findings can't attribute them more largely to mentoring in general. Thank you.
Thanks, Mark. I'm just going to pause here and see if we haven't anybody wants to raise their hand or submit a question at this point, because we'll have an opportunity at the end to ask some more questions, but I think we could take a couple at this point just about the research and about the findings that Mark has just shared. Give people a chance to type and find the spot to raise their hand.
And April, while we're waiting for people to think questions, Mark, do you want to say anything about maybe the implications of the study for practitioners? If there's anything that you guys found that would be a good practice for us to implement in our programs?
Well, we made a few recommendations about practice, but they largely come from as we compared the 3 studies.
Mm-hmm.
It's a little bit off of what I spoke about today with the meta-analysis.
Okay. And it wasn't what we talked about at all before this either, so I know you're not prepared to talk about it, but I was wondering if there's anything connected to what you talked about today that came out in some of the recommendations for programming.
I think what this says more largely is, looking at a wide range of school-based mentoring programs, what could you realistically expect from a year of school-based mentoring, and that if we want to have bigger effects, then something needs to be done, maybe through greater structure of the programs, or by making the relationships last longer, or something. But of course, bit on my researcher hat, and more research needs to be done about that. But I think these findings probably can most usefully be considered in terms of what the realistic expectation about mentoring in over one school year, in terms of what we tell our stakeholders and what we tell our communities and we tell our staffs, what the outcomes might be.
Mm-hmm. Great, thank you. And even what we tell the mentors about what they can hope to accomplish with their mentees, right?
Sure.
Okay.
Great. I don't see any questions just yet, but I think some of the questions we have planned for later, and it might be we'll just keep moving on here, but I'm not sure if I see Linda here yet.
I am
here.
Oh, you are here. Okay, good. I just don't see you logged in here. Okay. You must be just doing it on the phone. All right. Well, let me introduce then. So for another perspective on, so we wanted that research background to think about, what is the research telling us about the impact that mentoring can have on academic achievement. I always tell programs, too, that if you can show that your program works for whatever outcomes you're measuring, that's great. But it's also nice to know what, this meta-analysis and other research is saying, too. But now let's hear, we've had some other questions posted about, how are we, gauging that response from the film and how it's affecting mentoring, or how is it stimulating conversation amongst stakeholders and in the field. And so Linda Stewart is the Senior Vice President for Mentor, the National Mentoring Partnership. She's been in that position since February of 2008 and works with our network of state mentoring partnerships, including the Mentoring Partnership of Minnesota, to really help us support mentoring programs. Before joining Mentor, Linda was the Executive Director of the Maryland Mentoring Partnership for 11 years. So welcome, Linda. We're so glad to have you here. we're excited to have you share with us what Mentor's doing, and Mentor along with its partners is doing to really use the film to sort of catapult mentoring or get benefit the mentoring field.
Well, thank you, April. It's nice to be on this webinar with you all and to discuss Waiting for Superman, because it certainly is a film that if you've seen it, you are certainly impacted by it. I've seen it a couple of times now, and to me, it just really boils down to a film that has to do with inequities in the school system, but also it's around families who really want the best for their children in terms of their education and what they'll do to get that education. I think it's very compelling in the sense that we know that education is more important now than ever before, and the film gives you some very pressing statistics about how far the U.S. has fallen in terms of its educating of its citizens, and we're ranking much lower than we did 25 or 30 years ago. So that means we're really not equipped as we need to be for this economy, this global economy. So it really is a very complex situation, and Waiting for Superman shows you some of the complexities. It really is not a finger pointing as to who's not doing their job, even though you do see on the film the challenges that teachers are facing, and unions, and others that are involved in education. However, for us in the mentoring field and the mentoring movement, the film is really a good call to action. It's a wonderful opportunity for you to take this film and not just shake your head and say how bad things are for education, but to say, what can we all do in our community, in our program, in our families, to support young people and to use mentoring as a strategy for successful youth development. We all know that mentoring, just fundamentally that it works through our day-to-day work, and Mark's research and others who are researching, where we have much better data to say what mentoring can and cannot do. So we have a very, very powerful strategy, and to me, having Waiting for Superman come out at this particular time, it came out in September of this year. It came out right before school, or as school was getting started, when education is on the mind of everybody. It came out and said, okay, we know things can be much better, but we all have to do our part. And hence, for us, mentoring is going to be that strategy. So Mentor was asked by America's Promise and United Way Worldwide to join together in a strong social action role around Waiting for Superman. And with filmmaker Davis Guggenheim's attempt to put a face on America's complex educational challenges, we viewed this as an opportunity to elevate the national dialogue and to help create some tangible action steps that would support America's students, teachers, and schools. So with that, we began to disseminate information through our 24 mentoring partnerships across the country, and just saying, when the film comes to your community, think about not just going to the film, but having a discussion that follows, a panel discussion. And so Mentor has been the catalyst or convener or the resource for a number of panel discussions. And these panel discussions have included people like Davis Guggenheim, who is the filmmaker, some of the people who star in the film. Jeffrey Canada, who leads the Harlem Children's Zone and is prominently featured in this film. He's been a panelist in New York and Washington, D.C., and in other parts of the country. And then some local school officials, along with mentoring programs. And each of those individuals, of course, have a little bit of a different perspective and a solution. But the idea is by convening these good minds and these good intentions, we can harness a solution that will, at the end of the day, positively impact a young person. So certainly these panel discussions are an excellent vehicle following the film to have some discussion and to come out with an action plan. And our mentoring partnerships have been a part of these convenings. Other ways are that coming together with other mentoring programs in the community to form a collaborative, if perhaps a mentoring partnership is not in your state, that a collaborative of programs who, after the film, give out materials and information to recruit new mentors or to educate and advocate for support of mentoring, and then working with local school systems to have an organized mentoring effort in the school system. I think that really people are looking for tangible solutions, and we're so fortunate that mentoring is, well, I won't say it's a solution, it's a strategy that really can positively impact the community, both the mentors and the mentees, and you all know this. We have found through a survey that you'll find online on Mentor's website at mentoring.org and on many of the mentoring partnership websites. We're asking people to take the survey and to let us know if they are seeing a spike in interest around mentoring. And right now, it's pretty, you know, it's really hard to measure whether people are seeing a spike. But from the respondents, the 30 programs that have responded, about 12% have said that they see a spike in interest, and that they're reporting anywhere between 1 and 150 new mentor applications submitted. So I think, you know, we definitely see that there is some movement. At the same time, we also know the fall is usually the time when a lot of people start signing up to become mentors. So, you know, it's hard to really distinguish whether it's this film or not. But still the point is we have a great opportunity to mobilize around something that is very visible. If it is in your community, or if it's coming, the film is coming to your community, you have an opportunity to bring people together, to share your information about your program, to use it as a rallying point, a call to action to recruit new mentors. It all gets down to what, for us at Mentor, down to the fundamentals of quality mentoring. So whether there's a Waiting for Superman or some other film or some other campaign, it all gets down to we all have to continue to strive to have quality mentoring, meaning using the best practices, implementing them for our programs, ensuring that mentors really understand the challenges that their mentees are faced with. And it's not just simply saying, you know, this is going to be all fun, because the complexities of our young people, the mentees, is very, very deep. And so we want to prepare the mentors and those program managers that are serving the young people adequately. It really calls for using good training around youth culture and the kind of culture that our young people are involved in. And so if the adults are better equipped, they can better serve their mentees. Certainly Mentor has many tools, and again, partnering with America's Promise, there are a number of really great resources. Grad Nation is a guidebook to help communities tackle the dropout crisis. That can be found at the AT website. They've also done a facilitator's guide to help with waiting for Superman. You can find that facilitator's guide on their website as well.
We have links to both of those things at the end of the webinar too. Yep.
So please look at those, as well as the elements of effective practice, the third edition that Mentor has come out with, and I think that is very helpful because it does give you the research that substantiates why those best practices are in place. So I think the name of the game here is seize the moment, seize the opportunity as you see it to continue to do and deepen the good mentoring work that's already being done in your communities.
All right, thanks, Linda. As you're seeing here, this is the National Mentor Month materials here that help them get there, be a mentor. In case people haven't taken a look at that just yet. We do have, let's see here, I'm trying to check some. We have some questions that are popping in, but I think we are going to address those in the next one, so I'm just going to hang on to those. If you've been posting some questions, they're coming. We're gonna post some of those questions. But thank you, Linda. And if we have more questions about the Academic Achievement Through Mentoring Initiative or the role that Mentor's playing with all of those partners, we'll have that opportunity to ask some more questions then too. But we have one more panelist to hear from, and Sarah, I'm not sure if you want to go ahead and introduce Charles or Chuck for us.
Great. Charles, are you on the line?
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, good.
Great. Hi. How are you?
Very good.
Good. Okay, so let me just introduce. This is Charles Delchau. He's a teacher at Woodside High School and program coordinator for the Woodside High School Business Academy. And I have been working with a couple of high schools in the school district for, I think, about 4 or 5 years now, kind of helping them solidify their mentoring component of their academy program. And the academy is a school within a school. The majority of their students are at risk of failing or not being able to graduate from high school, and they learn some great career tech ed skills, smaller class sizes, more individual attention, excuse me, and they're mandated to provide mentors for all of the juniors. And they have a great program of attracting, anywhere from 50 to 100 mentors every year to meet up with these high school juniors, give them a little bit of career advice, help them out with some real great job skills like resume writing. They have a career fair. But also, I hear from the mentors that they're there just to listen to their mentees as they're going through their junior year in high school. Sometimes they continue on beyond that. So it's a great program, and when I first saw the film, I was rather surprised to see Woodside High School portrayed in a somewhat negative light, because I know that they have a great program in general for a lot of students, and also within the academy program, I know they're doing a really good job with mentoring. So I was hoping that Charles could share a little bit more about what they do. So welcome, Charles.
Thank you. Sarah, that was a very nice introduction and really good overview of what our program does. I would say, yeah, the biggest thing that the Academy program does in terms of the 11th grade year is really just that 1 year of school-based mentoring, as it was alluded to earlier, and it's really finding a professional in the workplace that's really acting as a strong role model for the students. As you alluded to, majority of our kids are at risk. The state, we get a state grant that requires that 50% of our kids are at risk. There's a myriad of ways that they define that, but basically kids who are going to possibly fail out of or drop out of high school. We have probably about 60 to 65% of the kids that fit that category. And with our mentoring program, as you said, it's really to find somebody who can be a role model for them. Many of the kids, I mean, their home lives can be highly dysfunctional. They don't have a strong role model in their household, and that's really what we're hoping that the mentor provides for them. I would say I would agree with the study that was put out by Mr. Wheeler. You know, for grades and in terms of improving academic performance, the biggest thing I've seen with adolescents is generally peers, and I would guess that probably, you know, studies would find that as well. But definitely in terms of making an adult contact at that age in their life, the kids, you know, they come to school, which is one of the most important things. As long as we have them here, we're pretty sure that they're going to graduate. And then, you know, you're keeping them in a system, in an educational system, and then hopefully moving them on to, most of our kids go to junior college, many for financial reasons. And then once they're in junior college, I mean, really there's limitless things that they can do, because they can go into a certification program at that point, or many of them then end up transferring to a four-year school. So that's for a majority of our kids that we're working towards there.
Okay, and do you want to say a little bit about how, what you've seen in terms of the impact of mentors? How have they really influenced the juniors in the program, or even seniors, if they continue their relationship?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing is you see kids really having enthusiasm for the workplace. Exposure to careers that they may not have thought of. I mean, what we do is we survey the kids in the springtime and say, you know, what are you thinking about doing? What's the nature of the mentor that you would like? And then we work over the summer trying to match them with a mentor that either fits their career choice or that we think might be a good personality pick. And so there's always the excitement from the kids just in the initial meetup of the mentor, you know, literally what do they look like, how old are they, things of that sort. But then as the year goes on, really the kind of the highlight is when they start to do the job shadows and they go out into the workplace. I mean, every kid in high school is always excited to get out of school, regardless of what it is. But then when they go on a job shadow and they see their mentor at work and, you know, meet other people in the workplace, you start to see their eyes kind of open up, and they'll come back and say that was, you know, it was really a great experience. And many times it may not be exactly what they envisioned for themselves, but, I mean, there's a genuine jump in enthusiasm for, they kind of have a vision for what the long term is going to be. And I think what a lot of those statistics bear out is, you know, if you're in education, I've been in teaching now for 15 years. I mean, if you want immediate results, I mean, that's not always going to happen. You know, you have to look at what's going to happen 4 or 5 years down the road with these kids. And that's really what you're going for. I mean, to see immediate, you know, improvement in academics, a kid going from a 1.5 to a 2.5 or a 3.0, probably not going to happen. But definitely that you start to see a change in attitude and a real enthusiasm, if you will, for, you know, that they're going to be a professional someday and that they're going to be an adult. So that's a good thing.
Great. And any comments on the portrayal of Woodside High School?
Yeah, I mean, I think I am one of those who I did not want to give my money to the film. Wait, it's in my queue. But it seems like it was a really unfair hit on Woodside, because Woodside has a myriad of programs that serves a lot of you know, diverse learners. I mean, we have the Academy program, we have Mesa Avid, we have a robotics and engineering career path. I mean, there's so many things that the school offers, and it really wasn't fair in my understanding of the way it was portrayed, and the statistics that they brought in. That UCLA study was really flawed, and so that I really thought that was kind of an unfair hit on Woodside. But I mean, if the film brings about a greater awareness of the problems and the challenges that education faces, you know, that's fine. But it wasn't really. If you know, the director never came and spoke to anybody on campus, never spoke to anybody in the district, just threw those statistics out there and took a shot of the school with their camera, and that was about it. So.
Okay. Well, and I have to say, from my interactions with the program at Woodside High School, those mentors are really performing a great service to those juniors who, like Charles said, are really showing them the possibilities of what they could do in their futures. And that's something they may not have the opportunity to experience outside of this mentoring program. So when they make the second film, they're going to have to come back and really focus on your program.
That would be nice. Yeah. That would be nice.
Thank you, Chuck. And I think, you just stated and communicated kind of a realistic message about what mentoring can do for academic achievement or any kind of improvement in academic performance, that it takes time and it's not going to be an overnight solution. But I'm wondering, this is a question that I'm getting a lot, and Sarah has said she's getting a lot too, this one and the next one that we'll pose, but from our programs, and I've had some things posted, some questions posted about, struggling with funding, and how do we, is anybody making cuts to their staff because of cuts to funding and in this tough economy, and so how maybe our panelists, but Mark from the research perspective, Linda, and thinking about the partnerships that Mentor has with other organizations, advice to programs and how they communicate a realistic message, to those, to funders, to other mentors, to other stakeholders about that impact that mentoring has on academic achievement.
So would you like me to answer or respond to that?
You sure can.
Okay. I think the biggest, we tell the mentors, when they come into our program, not to expect too much, that we're very thankful for what they're doing as a staff and so forth, but you may not really see that from the kid initially. It's one of those things that, realize that, and that's many of the mentors that we've had for multiple years, they understand that and they get a good flux on that. But I tell the mentors when they're coming in, if you're looking for the kid who you're going to guide to Stanford University and is going to go on and become a doctor, we're really not the program for you. But if you want to help a kid who otherwise may be dropping out of school and give them a little bit of a vision, be a role model for them, keep them in the game. That's really what we're trying to do. Academic achievement, just to be honest, I'm a social studies teacher. If you want academic achievement, the biggest thing is the kids are reading below grade level. If you want to be a mentor who's going to help the kid out learn to read better, that would be wonderful. But that's not, that's a whole different panoramic of what we got to do. I'm seeing that gap from the kids that we have in terms of the nature of their backgrounds and stuff like that. Reading is the biggest problem. And that's why I think a lot of times junior college really helps them, because it gives them that 2-year transition. But I think it's just to give, we're up front and honest about the type of kids we have in the program. And there are some, and I try and tell the mentors when they come in, your kid is, they may have some real problems. And I don't want to delve too deep and give away private issues that I may know and stuff like that, but I'll just kind of give them a heads up that they are definitely at risk. Or I'll tell the mentor, hey, this kid's a hard charger, they're high achieving, maybe they're a little low in some skill sets, but they're going to do everything they can to get a good grade. So I think that's what you have to be, and be honest about the program when they come into it, and set the expectations that way.
Yeah, and I think maybe, Mark, if you have advice from that research perspective, and if we can add Linda's voice in here too. I think Chuck just told us really well, like one of our most important stakeholders are mentors. Other stakeholders would be parents too, but to have that realistic message to them. But then thinking too, though, the reality is that if funders are looking for, more bang for their buck, why mentoring? What does mentoring uniquely do that other interventions may not? If we're looking at having someone focus on helping kids read, why is mentoring still important? Or looking at the research, and what's our message to those stakeholders about that? Or any advice?
Oh,
well,
oh, go ahead, sorry.
This is Linda. I was going to say, I think it's our job. We're all, youth professionals in the sense that either mentors or educators, And we have to educate those who don't know, whether it be the mentors or funders or board members, of what mentoring can and cannot do. That's why it's imperative that we really have that mentoring expertise, that we understand the research, that we understand the practical applications of what it can and cannot do, and that we clearly communicate that both verbally and in writing to parents and to other stakeholders and mentors. I think those of us who are in this profession too often, especially the mentoring movement, we want mentoring to be seen as the end-all be-all. And you know, the years and years of experience and research have shown us that mentoring is an assistance strategy. It helps support. It can help help a young person, you know, achieve academically, but a mentor is not a tutor. And you know, a mentor is a caring adult, a friend, a guide, and someone who is, in most cases, a volunteer. So as long as I think we do our job in making those distinctions as to what mentoring can and cannot do, what a mentor is and is not, through our training and through our ongoing development, then we can ensure that the understanding is very clear for those who do want to help.
Mark, did you want to add anything from that research perspective? Why mentoring? Why should somebody fund mentoring then?
I guess I would just highlight the findings on truancy reduction and absenteeism, and if folks want to talk to schools, you know, specifically with dropout prevention, I think folks can make that link between reducing truancy and keeping kids in school over time. But like Linda said, it's not the only part of the solution, but it can be, you know, part of the puzzle that helps kids. But you know, and frankly, I think there'd be a lot of school folks that would be interested in that. But I just think folks get in trouble if they're going to start promising improved grades or standardized test scores. And given the interest with funders wanting to see outcomes from programs on the ground too, it just might be setting folks up for hard discussions later. But starting out from a perspective of we want to reduce truancy and hopefully keep kids in school over the long term, I wouldn't feel would have any pause in having that conversation with school personnel.
Mm-hmm. I have a question here for you, Mark, about what kind of success you've had, and I'm not sure if you're working directly with volunteers anymore now that you're doing your research, but of training volunteers to have that understanding of, training volunteers to carry that understanding of mentoring to potential donors. You know, or has that been successful for you to pass that message along through have volunteer? Yeah. I mean, does that? I mean, do people feel like that message of, you know, dropout prevention, or you know, it becomes? I think programs are struggling to have a really strong statement, and I think that research and looking at the truancy and dropout prevention is really helpful to make the case that mentoring can help kids stay in school. You know, but a lot of times I hear programs that are measuring, instead of measuring that, are measuring grades, or in addition to measuring that, are measuring improvements in grades, and aren't getting the kinds of outcomes that maybe funders were expecting, or that they shared with stakeholders that they thought they might be able to get. So that's sort of some of that struggle.
This is Sarah. I'll add something there.
Mm-hmm.
I do hear from other programs too who are they're measuring grades because their funders are asking them to, and it's really tough, especially when you're talking about impacting the school system. And we can see that from the film and from what we all know about what's happening with the importance of teaching to test and having test scores as being the measurement of not only how well the students are doing, but also how the teachers are doing and how the schools are doing. And then it's difficult to come in with the message of, well, we can impact a young person's hope for the future, perhaps some, dropout prevention and some reduced truancy, and a lot of, academic personnel and a lot of funders really want to hear, okay, but we need to make sure these kids are getting better grades. It's a very tough situation.
We have a question from somebody representing a funder, but saying, so here we go. So maybe Linda, you can help with this too, or or anybody any of the attendees here, if you have a response, feel free to share that then too. But she says, I understand the link between mentoring and truancy prevention, but is keeping kids in school the same as helping them graduate? So thinking if our goal is to get them to graduate, is keeping them in school enough?
Well, it's one of the predictors. I mean, we don't have the research to show that keeping a kid in school in 3rd grade is going to make them graduate from high school. And I guess we need more research on what can be done in those intervening years. But it's definitely predictive of that in the future. And that, just also think about how we talk to school personnel. I mean, as I've talked to teachers about school-based mentoring, I think there's an interest in just having adults from the community come into the schools, and to have more connection between the community and the schools, and have more people care about the schools, like people are caring about schools after seeing this film. So that might be another way to talk to the schools as well.
That's interesting to think about. What are the outcomes for mentors? What impact does mentoring have on those adults? Yeah. Linda, did you want to respond to that question then too, about understanding that link between mentoring and truancy prevention, but does keeping them in school help them graduate? Or how does mentoring help kids graduate?
Well, I just would know it from a practical standpoint that you've got to be in school to, I mean, it's like step by step. You've got to be in school in order to get your work done, and then to graduate, to get promoted, and then to graduate. But I mean, I don't know it from the research standpoint, and I think as a funder, that's probably really what they want. So, and Mark's the research expert on the call, so certainly consulting with him and other research colleagues, I think, can give the funder that more definitive answer that they may be looking for.
We have some articles referenced in that full report that we wrote that talk about the link between truancy prevention and high school graduation.
Mm-hmm. And again, one of the things that I would say to any programs that I'm working with is that, yes, this is what there's a research study, or maybe we don't have that research, but if you're evaluating your program, if you've decided we're going to look at that, you can track your kids over time and start keeping track of that information and be able to tell a funder definitively and confidently, yeah, our program does work for that, if that's something that an outcome that you're seeking. We have another, let's see. Is the research showing that programs that provide mentoring and training programs are more effective than those who only provide mentoring? I wonder if this means mentoring and tutoring. That maybe provide mentoring and tutoring programs are more effective than those only providing mentoring. Thinking, Mark, I wonder if that's about the other interventions that we were showing.
Yeah, there are a couple of those that we showed with comparing our meta-analysis with a meta-analysis on volunteer tutoring. That tutoring seems to be more effective in those hard academic outcomes. There's also recent evaluation of experience score, which is mostly tutoring, so it's maybe a little bit mentoring, when they had a modest impact on improved reading scores with youth.
Yeah, there's another comment here that says, in order to graduate, a child must be in school. Although there are no guarantees, having a child in school exposes a child to opportunities they might not otherwise have. And there's another question here, Lorraine, and I'm going to launch a poll because I think it gets at your question here. This is our last poll as we continue moving on here. So here's a question for you. Which mentoring model is better? This research was looking at school-based mentoring programs and some of those other more structured mentoring pieces. So if you can take your guess or respond to this poll question, that would be great. Which mentoring model is better at achieving academic outcomes, school-based or community-based? Just a couple more seconds here. There's a lot of options to choose from. All right, I'm going to close. And share with you. Here we go. So 42% of the people who responded on this particular poll are leaning towards school-based mentoring. A pretty big chunk not sure, and others are talking about community-based mentoring. We don't have a definitive answer here. We can ask people to respond, but like Lorraine had said, this research focused on school-based mentoring. Is there any idea what those numbers might be like, or for the community-based mentoring programs? And I think there's similar, you can correct me, but we would see some similar effects on truancy or dropout prevention for community-based programs as well, and perhaps even more significant. But
yeah, just to note the 1995 public-private venture study on Big Brother Sisters community-based mentoring did find that reduction in truancy from community-based mentoring, as well as a slight impact on grades. But that was quite a long time ago. I don't know about more recent research. I know one thing David Dubois is working on right now is a new meta-analysis of mentoring in general, and that will include comparisons between community-based and school-based mentoring in his meta-analysis. So look out for that maybe next year.
Yeah. And if we're looking at, that I'm going to go forward to this next slide because it's something that we've been talking about then too, is like, and kind of what Chuck was talking about how do programs convince mentors, or realistically communicate to mentors what kind of impact they can have, but also how do we convince mentors that, if we're looking for academic outcomes, that they can get there through this relationship building. So community-based mentors, school-based mentors, regardless of where you're located, if you're still focused on building a longer, stronger relationship, that you can improve some of those academic outcomes about, dropout prevention, truancy, behavior, or misconduct and behavior. I still just wanted to add, with the conversation about is it enough to get them to school or to prevent truancy? Is that really going to help them graduate? And so there's another comment that said, to an extent, yes, but however, schools are allowing youth to graduate with a 2.0 or lower GPA. So does it prepare them to graduate college ready? And so Levon here says, I would say no, that we would have to do more and focus on the academics and not just attendance.
And this is Sarah. I just wanted to add that was one of the impressions I had from the film, is that, mentoring, like Linda said, we know that mentoring does work. And if one impact is to help students stay in school a little bit longer, what are we going to do if the schools are failing? If it's not a good environment for them to be in. Not that mentoring can address that question, but it's an interesting concept to think of. We help them stay in school, and maybe they will help to improve the school's overall functioning by showing up every day or showing up more often. But it's an interesting thought that I had about the whole film and the academic achievement movement that we're talking about too.
Something's goofed up here with this slide. Sorry. Oh, I have to close the poll. Sorry, you can't even see what I'm looking at. We started to get some. Oh, go ahead. Yep.
Well, just to mention one other finding from our meta-analysis was this finding on non-parental adult relationships, and that we are seeing more kids say that they have a special adult that is there for them through having a school-based mentor. And not to minimize that, there's a lot of research about, youth resilience, that non-parental adults are very important to kids to be resilient and successful over time, and that what a lot of kids are missing, frankly, in the school system is an adult that advocates for them. So to have, if they don't have a parent that's advocating for them in the school system, a lot of what it takes to succeed is having that adult, and maybe mentors can fill that role of advocating for kids. But I think that also is going to require us to think and train mentors a little bit differently as we match them with youth in a school setting.
I think that's a good transition. So again, thinking about this youth mentoring response. So we've had a few comments about are people finding places where donors, volunteers, other mentoring supporters or champions are talking about mentoring as a direct result of the Waiting for Superman movie. So we heard from Linda about the survey and how we're finding out more about that, but also in addition to that question was how do we stimulate that conversation, or how do we use the film? And another question too is about somebody who coordinates a business mentoring program, and that they adopted a local school, and any suggestions on how to encourage more businesses to become involved. But maybe to frame it within how do we use this documentary, or how do we use Waiting for Superman for things like Mark said about training mentors differently, perhaps, about engaging in those discussions and the slide got a little goofed up, but we've got recruitment, training, fundraising, advocacy, different ways that people have used it. So we'd love to hear from attendees. How are you using it? How are other programs that you know of? How are they using the film to stimulate these kinds of discussions or respond? Linda, have you heard some good examples?
I know many of the mentoring partnerships are, as I said, convening various forums around the film while it's still in the theaters, and I understand it's going to be on DVD starting in February. Also, Mentoring Month, that seems like a great time to convene groups around it, because it's not just going to see it, but I think you really do have to process people afterwards, so that you can use it as a call to action, and you can use that inspiration that people, I think, get from the film and turn it into action. So coming up with a menu of things that people can do after the film is really good, whether it be volunteering at the school in some capacity, becoming a mentor, helping with some activity during a workplace mentoring day at a corporation. There are just a number of different menu items, I think, that a program can present that would engage people, because the whole thing is around civic engagement and giving people various options. And just in terms of the mechanics of it, being very quick on the follow-up, because as soon as people leave the movie, even though they're inspired, unless you follow up with them quickly, they do sort of lose it. So I think having that follow-up strategy already designed, once people see the movie, then that will quickly engage them. And of course, we talked about the training that's so imperative for volunteers, so that they can be successful in their relationships.
Great. We've got Dan Bassel is talking about that they're using blogs and the Tutor Mentor Conference on November 19th, drawing attention to the film and to find out where and why tutor mentor programs are most needed, and what volunteers and donors can do to help these programs grow. We also have, somebody here in Minnesota who would like to, Jessica, who would like to have the movie play at a local small town theater and have a community-wide discussion held afterwards, but not sure how to get it to the theater there. I think that's an issue for a lot of programs. Dan,
we can help with that.
Great.
So certainly anyone can email me at lstewart@mentoring.org. We have Ellen Chrisman, who is our liaison with the team over at Participant Media, who are the distributors of it, and we may be able to help on that end on getting it into theaters.
Great, great. And another program here in Minnesota came up with the idea to have a discussion right after the film with potential mentors that they could invite. Also, just having tables out about mentoring programs or information right outside the door when people leave the film so they can take action right then and there. And Linda, I think you mentioned that programs were doing that around the country as well. And we can continue if you have other ideas to share. Continue to pass those along. I mean, we looked at showed you the mentor website, and we can share those ideas that way. But also share them with me, and share them with Sarah as well. And we can certainly highlight those to you. Or it's nice to have those ideas. We have some additional resources. We're technically done at 1:15, but leave that extra time for some questions and things. But if you download this presentation, you can have links to all of these different resources. But, oops. So, with the Mentoring Partnership of Minnesota, we've done a webinar previously on our K-12 Journey Map, an interactive map starting from pre-K and into college. It's a conversation tool and for mentors and mentees to think about what is that journey. Friends for Youth, our partner in this offering this webinar. Sarah, you can jump into and talk about the mentoring journal, but also the academic activity guide. And a new resource down here in the bottom left, the Mentoring Partnership of Long Island has just released this Discovering the Possibilities Toolkit, which is activities for mentors and mentees to do in thinking about how do we help mentors help kids not just stay in school but graduate and go on to college. So that's a great resource to check out. Additional things, we've mentioned Grad Nation with America's Promise and that Facilitator Toolkit. So if you're inspired and want to facilitate a conversation, what's nice about that toolkit is it does provide a more personal response to the film. So like Lavon said about scheduling a discussion with potential mentors maybe right after the film, it works better for that format. We looked at using it for the webinar, but weren't sure that format would necessarily translate. But National Mentoring Center has their school-based mentoring resources, but also this great resource about incorporating academic achievement into mentoring programs and relationships. I've referred lots of programs to that, and also the Participant Media. Somebody was asking too about if anybody's keeping track of different blogs or information about the film or conversations that have started, and Participant Media and the Waiting for Superman website are keeping track of some of those things too. Just some additional things, and some of these are Minnesota-based, but Admission Possible is Minnesota-based, but is available in other states as well, but dedicated if we're thinking about some ways to address this dropout crisis and challenging expectations is a resource here in the Twin Cities from our public television, but there's this is a link to their YouTube site, so you could take a look at some of the videos that have been created there. They're pretty powerful and talk about some of the barriers to getting to college and getting to graduation, but also some great success stories. Check and Connect was one of the other interventions that was mentioned by Mark as one of those interventions, and does include a mentoring component, and then another resource from Minnesota about Learn More, another group working on that. But also wanted to point out that again, and remind you again that this webinar will be offered November 16th, so we'll have a chance to talk about this topic again and hear from others with the Friends for Youth Mentoring Institute webinar series. So if anybody missed it or wants to get access to some of that information, we can do that.
I think we can also expand the conversation too, so if anyone wants to return and has thought about more ideas or has gotten to see the film and wants to add something else, we can certainly do that too.
And for the Mentoring Partnership of Minnesota, our next Quality in Action webinar will be December 1st. And so there's a lot of you who join us every month, and just knowing that the next topic will be looking at preparing mentees. If we have any other questions or comments, we've had something about what is the title of the webinar. I'm not sure what that question is about. You know, and some specific things that we can respond to individually. But if anybody wants to raise their hand or pose another question, I mean, I think, you know, we have to be able to confidently and definitively tell our stakeholders that mentoring can indeed have an impact on academic achievement. I have programs who don't, you know, they don't want to change their mission and don't want to change what they're doing, but they do want to be able to survive in this funding atmosphere and to be able to tell those funders that yes, mentoring can have an impact on academic achievement. So, and you know, we don't want to be competing, and we know that mentoring can be most successful alongside other youth programming and other youth interventions as well, but that's a thing that we will grapple with. We do have a hand raised. Linnell, did you want to share something or add something to the conversation?
Yes, I was just wondering who do I contact about getting the Waiting for Superman movie? I'm out of Fargo, North Dakota, and I'd love to have the movie in the theater over National Mentoring Month.
Great. Linnell, I'll connect you with Ellen and Linda with Mentor.
Thank you.
You bet. Sarah, do you have any closing comments, or any of our panelists have anything they want to share here at the end?
No, I just want to say I really appreciate the opportunity to work with you, April, and to collaborate with you on this webinar, and I really hope that other people will be able to join us again for the next one in a couple weeks.
Great. Thanks, Sarah. Likewise. And thank you, Mark. Thank you, Linda. Thank you, Chuck, for joining in, and for all the attendees, your great comments and your questions. We love having you here. And hopefully we'll continue this conversation in other forums as well. Thank you so much.